I spent countless hours making sure everything was in order before my 2-week vacation. Leaning back in my chair, I turned to enjoy the view through the window behind my desk when I heard the familiar, sweet voice of my assistant.
Well, Luke, are you ready for the big day?
As ready as I'll ever be, Melanie. It's not like this is my first rodeo. Make this one last, would you, boss? You don't need to set a record for the most marriages in a decade. I chuckled. You teasing me? Maybe just a bit. But you're too good of a guy to deal with all the crap you've been through. Call it what it is, Mel. It's been a ton of bull. Are you set to go? Need me to cover anything? No, I think we've covered everything. Thanks for suggesting I take off after Wednesday for a Saturday wedding. Tonight, I can just stop by the pub and relax before diving into all the details on Thursday and Friday. I'm glad we're keeping this wedding small. So, are you going to report me to HR if your assistant gives you a big hug? I never have before. Melanie had become one of my closest friends, and she's been special to me ever since I hired her shortly after I started at Personal Wealth Financial nearly 10 years ago. I'll never forget when I first interviewed her. Her resume made her the top candidate, but when she walked into my office, I saw a somewhat plain, skinny girl who seemed shy and reserved. It didn't take long to notice the redness around her nose and slightly dark eyes. The poor girl was sick as a dog, but still pushed through the interview. I was impressed enough to invite her back for a second interview. That's when I met the real dynamo, brimming with personality. True, she wasn't conventionally attractive, skinny as a rail and hardly enough of a butt to keep her slacks up, but she was full of confidence and had a beauty that some of the prettiest girls I knew could learn from. Her husband is one lucky man. I decided to unwind for a few hours at my favorite pub near my home in Kirkland, Washington, and enjoy a light dinner. Kaylee, the bartender, has been many things to me over the years. Her lovely red hair framed the weathered face of the woman who became a second mother to me, a confidant, a sounding board, and a caring friend. When she was younger, I'm sure she was quite attractive, but a tough life and smoking had taken their toll on her late 40s features. But to me, she was beautiful. She had seen me at my lowest and always seemed to know the right thing to say. The pub was sparsely populated, with the familiar scent of fried food and the comforting atmosphere of raw emotions being soothed. As I strolled up to the bar, Kaylee glanced my way and smiled. Mr. 3 Cheats to the Wind. How's my favorite customer? Better than I deserve, Kaylee. Are you still tied down to that man of yours, or are you ready to run away with me? What? And spoil the big day this Saturday for your lovely bride? So, the usual Luke? Yep. As Kaylee hurried off to pour my drink, I noticed an attractive woman sitting alone 3 stools down from me. She looked to be in her mid to late 30s, biting her lower lip with a slight grin that seemed to result from my playful exchange with Kaylee. I decided to be friendly and greeted her. Hi. Her forehead wrinkled, and she eyed me suspiciously. You don't look drunk. I raised an eyebrow. That's the most unusual greeting anyone's ever given me. No, I'm not drunk. The bartender said you were 3 sheets to the wind. I assumed that meant she thought you were drunk. Oh, I laughed. That's just her nickname for me, but it's not 3 sheets. It's 3 cheats. Great. Another guy who can't keep it in his pants. She seemed to bite her lip a bit harder, and the scowl on her face made it clear this was personal to her. Just as I was about to say something, Kaylee set my beer down in front of me and stepped in to help. Listen, lady, Luke here is one of the nicest and most loyal guys I know. He wasn't the one who cheated. Sadness clouded her face, and her lips trembled. Sorry. I could tell she was on the verge of tears, so I nervously extended my hand, hoping to avoid the emotional outburst that seemed inevitable. No worries, I'm Luke. She gave my hand a quick, almost frantic handshake, as if she was uncomfortable with physical contact. No, I really am sorry. You can call me been cheated on too many times to count, or just Linda for short. Nice to meet you, Linda for short. Sorry, Touchy subject? My lame joke seemed to lighten her mood, which was a relief since I hate making women cry. Yeah, definitely a touchy subject. But something tells me there's an interesting story behind your 3-cheat experience. I guess, but I'm not sure you really want to hear about it. Go on, Luke. Tell her your story, Kaylee chimed in. It's a good one. Linda gave me a playful pout. Please? You two aren't going to let me off the hook, are you? Nope, they answered together. All right. Let's see, where do I start? Harper life doesn't always go as planned. I realized my marriage was over long before our first anniversary. Surprisingly, I wasn't too bothered by the end of the marriage itself, but my confidence had taken a hit. I first started seeing Harper during our senior year of high school. I was an 18-year-old virgin, and she was also 18, but far from inexperienced. I didn't actively pursue her. We were brought together by a group of friends. Looking back, I should have turned down the opportunity, but my impulses got the better of me. After a game, my teammates cornered me in the locker room. Luke, when are you going to stop hanging out with the chubby girl and get someone worthy of our quarterback? Chuck, if you talk about Aubrey like that again, I'll knock you out. She's not chubby, just a little soft, but I like her, and even though we're not dating, she's my best friend. Fine, but you need a real girl who's more available. We need to get you some experience. I don't need your help with that. Back off. Ted stepped in to defuse the situation. Hey, Luke, sorry about that. It's just that Harper told my girlfriend she really wants to be with you. Harper may be gorgeous, but she's interested in anyone who wears pants. That's not what I'm looking for. She's not really like that. She's nice and she's got a thing for you. Come to my party tomorrow night. She'll be there. Just see if there's any spark. What's the harm? The guys were really cruel when it came to my friend Aubrey. She wasn't a graceful, skinny model, but she was exactly what I liked. She had a healthy girl-next-door face, which I knew would remain gorgeous even in adulthood and beyond. We hadn't actually met, but the difference wasn't noticeable because we were always together. To tell the truth, I found her exceptionally beautiful both on the outside and inside. If I had my way, I would have wanted us to become each other's first lovers, but she had a moral core that I admired, and I tried to emulate it. We grew up together in the church, and I wanted to be true to my beliefs. Unfortunately, those damn teenage hormones destroyed the weak defenses I had built around my chastity. Admit it. I wanted intimacy. At Ted's party, Harper was looking for me like a heat-seeking missile looking for its target. Luke, Ted said you'd be here. Hi, Harper. You look good. Is it tasty enough to eat? Well, I don't. Relax, Luke. I'm just messing with you. She wasn't messing with me. We played tonsil hockey for an hour, and it wasn't even half the night before my bed experience changed on many levels. I was completely engulfed by her. Aubrey understood everything at once. She seemed offended, but she accepted my transition to the dark side. A few weeks later, she started dating Dennis, the center of our team. Knowing that Aubrey would take his time, I joked to both of them that, as a quarterback, I held Dennis's hands more often than Aubrey. She wasn't amused, and Dennis asked me to calm down. I apologized to both of them and felt pretty awkward after that. The way they scolded me made me ashamed of my changed attitude, but in the end, I was a stupid teenager. I started to distance myself from Aubrey and Dennis. Looking back, I realized that I lived in darkness, which made me uncomfortable with the light surrounding them. I wanted to have fun, and being around them marred my enjoyment. Harper and I met and studied each other for the rest of the school year and the following summer. I liked our relationship. She was attractive and knew how to use her well-developed talents. She was also easy to communicate with, and we found that we had a lot of common interests and views. After a few months, I started falling in love with her. In the fall, Harper was planning to enroll at Washington State University, while I was heading to Indiana to study at Purdue on a football scholarship. As much as I loved her, I knew that long distances would be hard for both of us. We agreed not to lock ourselves into each other and get together when we're both at home. For the first 2 years of college, my hormones and party instincts took control of my life. True to our word, Harper and I hooked up whenever we were home, but we never talked about what happened when we were apart. That seemed like the best approach for both of us. I found myself comparing every girl I met to Harper, and none of them measured up. I missed her more and more and eagerly looked forward to seeing her again. I started calling her more often, and I could sense she felt the same way. Despite being miles apart, my love for her only grew. By my junior year, I began to mature and take on more responsibility. The values I had been taught as a child started to weigh on me, and I grew tired of the emptiness that came with my promiscuous lifestyle. From then on, I was only intimate with Harper and began to think about proposing. The summer before our senior year, I needed to understand Harper's feelings about our relationship. "Hey, can we talk about something?" "Sure, Luke. Are you okay? You seem a bit serious." "Yeah, I am. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I guess the first 2 years of college were, well, a bit wild with other girls. I always loved you and knew we'd be together again, but I was driven by hormones and other girls were kind of available. Were you the same way with other guys?" "I hooked up a few times for fun, but I always wished it was with you. No one else could compare, you know?" "Yeah, I understand. I assumed you were seeing other guys, and that was fine. It was what we agreed on. But this year, it started to feel like I was cheating, and I realized I wanted to be a one-woman man with you. I haven't kissed anyone else since we were together last summer. I'm hoping you can promise me you feel the same way. I only love you, Luke. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Harper jumped into my lap, bouncing with excitement, and shouted, "Yes, yes, yes!" We made love and then lay side by side, sharing our dreams for our future together. Suddenly, she sat up with a worried expression. "You don't want to get married before our senior year, do you?" "No, maybe a few months after we graduate." Harper seemed relieved by this. I thought she was considering practicality, but it still unsettled me a bit. I also realized I hadn't really addressed her recent faithfulness, though she somehow made me believe she was devoted only to me. It was a small worry, but it lingered. After graduation, Harper landed a job with a real estate firm, while I began my career at Personal Wealth Financial Planning. We got married in December of that year, and I thought I was content. I was eager to return to the faith I had during my upbringing, but it soon became clear that Harper had no interest in spiritual matters. Living with someone reveals a lot more about their true nature. It didn't take long after the wedding for the first red flag to appear. Harper convinced me to cut short our honeymoon in California's wine country so we could attend a New Year's Eve party with many of her college friends. I barely saw my new wife throughout the night. The party, held at a rented dance hall, was filled with guests. Harper flitted around the room, chatting with everyone, while I occasionally lost track of her. Several of her friends kept me occupied, almost as if it were their task for the evening. I had to carry an unconscious Harper to the car and into our apartment. She was very attentive and apologetic about her behavior at the party, so I let it slide. However, over the next year, I struggled with mounting issues in my mind. She had many evening appointments, was vague about her work and personal life, and it often seemed like her friends took precedence over me. How could I be married for less than a year and still feel so isolated? A year later, it was time for another New Year's Eve party at the same place. I really didn't want to go, but I felt obligated to observe Harper when she was with her friends. I thought I'd have a better chance of seeing the real Harper if she didn't know I was there, so I canceled at the last minute, citing an upset stomach. Harper almost seemed relieved that I was staying home. I waited until the party lasted a few hours and came around 10. As soon as I got there, I tried to stay out of sight. It wasn't long before I noticed Harper at the other end of the room, surrounded by a group of 6 guys. They took turns giving her kisses. Soon after, I saw her pull one of them by the hand into the hallway leading to the small dance practice rooms. The other guys stayed behind, high-fiving each other and clearly waiting for their turn. I stood there for a minute, wondering what to do, but finally decided I had to find out what was going to happen next. I started across the room, but Amy, Harper's friend, noticed me. "Luke, Harper said you were sick at home." "Get out of the way, Amy." "Luke, please don't go in there." I grabbed her hands and looked straight into her eyes. "Why? What will I see?" Amy was shaking with fear. She could feel my growing anger, which I didn't even try to hide. "Luke, you're not going to like this. Please don't. She really loves you." I pushed her aside and followed my wife. In the rehearsal room, I saw Harper kissing the guy she dragged there. I wanted to rush in and fight them, but instead, I discreetly took a few pictures on my phone before heading home. Once I got to the apartment, I printed out one of the photos and left it on the table alongside my wedding ring. I packed enough clothes for a week and headed to the Holiday Inn. It felt strange. Sitting alone in the room, I expected to either cry or explode in anger. Instead, it was as if I finally had answers to the questions that had been nagging at me for so long. I kept her in the dark for a few days while I found a small furnished apartment. Then I called to set up a time for us to meet and talk. "Luke, where the hell are you? How could you just leave like that?" "I'll come over tonight to talk." "Luke, please. I'm sorry for what you saw. It was—" "Shut up, Harper. We'll discuss it tonight. I'll be there at 7. I ended the call and searched for any emotion to hold on to. I felt a rush of emptiness, mixed with some anger and a fair amount of bruised ego, but overall, there was a profound sense of relief. Sure, I had wasted a bit over a year with her, but discovering the real Harper seemed to validate my growing suspicions. Our relationship was never truly right. My mind drifted back to a conversation I had with my dad years ago about love and relationships. I asked him how I would know when I had found the right woman. His words echoed in my mind. "It's different for everyone. When you kiss her, you might feel your knees go weak or experience a jolt of electricity. It could show up in some other way. You'll know." I didn't recall feeling that kind of confirmation with Haley. Sure, our kisses were passionate, but I now saw that it was purely physical. I never sensed the genuine connection my dad described. To my surprise, I was okay. I was still disappointed in her behavior, but I was managing just fine. I walked into the apartment at 7 without knocking. Harper sat at the kitchen table staring at the incriminating picture and my ring. Calmly and clearly resigned to the situation, she greeted me with the words that summed it all up. "We're done, aren't we?" I sat down across from her. "Yes." "Aren't you going to yell or rant or something?" "Why? Should I?" "I would. It seems I've finally seen the real you, Harper. And to be honest, we're not right for each other. Even more revealing to me is that I don't think I ever loved you in the way that people in a marriage should love each other. I don't think you loved me that way either. Let's part ways, keep things civil, and move on. Okay?" I was surprised she wasn't more emotional. She merely shrugged her shoulders, which conveyed her thoughts even more clearly than her next words. "I guess I wasn't really ready to be married. I wanted to be ready. You're the kind of guy I wanted to settle down with, and I wanted to be the girl and wife you wanted. I really did. You're right. It's just not me." Today, back at the bar, Linda seemed lost in thought as I wrapped up the part of my story about Harper. "Wow. It sounds like you really avoided a disaster by uncovering the truth early in your marriage. It took me 14 years to realize my marriage was a lie." "Don't get me wrong. You're a truly beautiful woman. But I can see the pain in your face when you talk about it. I guess discovering the truth, no matter when it happens, can be incredibly painful. But at least you can move on, hopefully, with a bit more wisdom." Resting my head on my hand with my elbow propped up on the bar, I gazed into her eyes. "I have a feeling I need to hear your story too. I'm making progress, but yes, I'll share my story eventually. However, we've only covered one affair in yours, and I need to hear it all. If you insist, it ends better than it starts, so maybe that will give you some hope." Linda glanced away for a moment, deep in thought. "Do you still see Harper?" "Occasionally. She was diagnosed with MS shortly after our divorce, which made her mature quickly. She's doing well now and married a great guy. They seem to be good for each other. You're not one of those people who get satisfaction from seeing karma hit their ex, are you?" "No, not at all. I wouldn't wish something like MS or any illness on anyone. I still have positive feelings for Harper. We ended things on good terms." "So, who's next?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Next, that's a pretty apt way to describe what happened with Zoe." Zoe. I first encountered Zoe at a party organized for my old friends, Aubrey and Dennis. They had married while still in college, and after graduation, Dennis landed a role with a major manufacturing company. At a surprisingly young age, he was promoted to vice president of finance and had to relocate to Dallas. All their friends gathered at the Hyatt ballroom to bid them farewell. As I was chatting with a friend, the atmosphere seemed to brighten when Zoe entered the room, exuding an air of glamour and elegance. She was, simply put, breathtaking. I later discovered that her photo had graced the cover of Maxim about a year prior. Every man present, myself included, found themselves awestruck. Most of the men there were accompanied by their wives. Then something amusing happened. The wives swiftly formed an effective barrier around their husbands, almost as if orchestrated by a seasoned general. I was one of the 3 single men left, and Zoe's gaze quickly turned towards me. I watched as she made her way over, and I couldn't help but fear that my growing attraction might become too noticeable. "Hi, I'm Zoe. Am I imagining things, or did it seem like about 20 women just laid claim to their men?" "I don't think it's just your imagination. I'm Luke, by the way." She shook my hand, and her touch sent shivers down my spine. "Nice to meet you, Luke. I guess the ladies must see me as a threat. You don't seem to have a partner keeping an eye on you." "No, my partner and I parted ways a few months ago. And yes, you're definitely a threat. You should know how stunning you are." "Thank you. But you're incredibly handsome yourself." I felt my cheeks heat up from a deep blush as I scrambled to find a clever response. "How about we spend some time appreciating each other's charm?" Her laugh was incredible. "I like you, Luke. You're funny. Maybe we should just hang out and get to know each other." So, we did hang out. She was smart and engaging, and our conversation flowed effortlessly. I was captivated, and she seemed interested in me too. As the party started winding down, Zoe and I made plans to meet the following evening. She had to leave a bit early, giving me a chance to catch up with Aubrey and Dennis. Aubrey was still as wonderfully attractive as I remembered from high school. Though she hadn't lost weight, she was still perfect in my eyes. When I approached her, she greeted me with a slight frown. "Hey, Casanova, did Zoe manage to hook you?" "We got along pretty well. Why do you ask?" "Just be careful. Dennis and I care about you a lot, and we don't want to see you get hurt again." "She seems harmless, and I really like her." "Luke, I care about you, my friend. Open your eyes. You're falling into the same pattern." Aubrey's words stung a bit. How could she assume I didn't know what I was doing? "I'll be okay. We've only just met. I'm not planning a wedding just yet." "All right. She's smart and successful, so she has a lot going for her. Just promise me you'll stay vigilant. Protect your heart. It's a good one, and you're a great guy. You need to find someone who truly deserves you." I wanted to respond, but I couldn't bring myself to. I wanted to say, "I found that person," but I let her go. Zoe and I quickly found ourselves on the same page about life's major issues. Before long, we became intimate, and just 6 months after meeting, we were married. I made it clear that faithfulness was a top priority for me, and she assured me she felt the same way. We seemed to share a strong commitment to faith, leading me to believe we had what it took to last a lifetime. Zoe owned a small modeling agency and was dedicated to maintaining a good work-life balance. Our wedding was simple, and we began our life together with great optimism for the future. Our home life was warm and fulfilling, and our intimacy life was incredibly satisfying. Zoe never gave me any reason to doubt her commitment to monogamy or our marriage. After 3 years of marital happiness, we started talking about having children. Zoe appeared enthusiastic about the idea, but I noticed she hadn't taken the necessary steps to conceive, like stopping birth control, despite having agreed to do so. Nonetheless, I felt elated and confident that having Zoe in my life was a stroke of good fortune. Just when everything seemed perfect and life felt on track, it took a turn for the worse. On a dark and rainy Monday, I experienced one of the most devastating days of my life. Aubrey called my office early that morning, which was unusual since she rarely contacted me at work. From her voice, I could tell something was wrong. "Aubrey, what's happening?" "I don't want to alarm you, but, I need to tell you something. Dennis has leukemia." "Oh my God, did you just find out?" "I just came back from the doctor's office. He said there are many treatments available these days." "I hope he's right. Are you all right?" She sighed, and I could hear her trying to pull herself together. "Yeah, the doctor seemed positive. It's definitely a shock. Dennis has been a bit tired lately, but we didn't expect this. But you know Dennis, he's putting on a brave face, but I can see through it. Keep us in your thoughts, okay?" She tried to sound hopeful, but I knew her well enough to see that she was masking deep fear and a heavy wave of depression. I wanted to be there to comfort both of my friends, but that wasn't possible. We used to talk on the phone about once a month, but I decided I needed to increase that to at least once a week from now on. Even though she was thousands of miles away, my friend needed me. After our call was disconnected, I was overwhelmed with a deep sense of depression. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of worry as I gazed out of my office window at the dreary, rainy view. While I was struggling with that news, another close friend, my personal assistant, Melanie, entered my office quietly and closed the door. Her face was flushed, and her eyes were red, as though she had been crying. I initially thought her appearance meant she had heard about Dennis and Aubrey, but I was mistaken. "Luke, you know I care about you deeply and would never want to hurt you, right?" "Mel, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I've been worrying about this all weekend, but you need to know something. My husband and I went out for dinner and dancing to celebrate our anniversary on Saturday. We went to the jazz club downtown and—" She began to cry. My mind raced, trying to anticipate what she was about to say. Then it hit me. Zoe was supposed to be at a partners meeting in Portland on Saturday and had stayed overnight. "What is it, Mel?" "Your wife was there with another man, and I took some photos." "Oh God, I'm so sorry, Luke." The photos were quite clear, showing intimate touches under the table, dancing closely, and heavy kissing. My tears flowed like the Snoqualmie Falls. First, Dennis and Aubrey's dreadful news shattered my emotions, and now Zoe was betraying me. Melanie enveloped me in hugs and apologies. I managed to calm myself down, thanked her for telling me, and apologized for Zoe ruining their weekend. Melanie forwarded the photos to me, and I printed out the more explicit ones for that evening. I recognized the man as one of the models Zoe managed. On the way home, I stopped at the pub to muster some courage for the confrontation. Kaylee was great at helping me relax. A few of my old football friends were there too. Unbeknownst to me, 2 of them had devised a plan to teach Zoe's lover a lesson. Later, I found out they had tracked him down and beaten him badly. I wished they hadn't, yet I felt guilty for secretly being relieved that they had. Waiting for Zoe to come home felt endless. My stomach churned as my mind cycled through anger, hatred, regret, thoughts of forgiveness, and pain. When she finally walked in, I was seated at the dining room table with the evidence ready. She entered with her usual cheerfulness. "Hi, babe." She came over to kiss me, and I pushed her away. "Sit down. Now." She sat down so quickly she almost missed the chair. Luke, why are you talking to me like that? I don't know. One by one, I placed the photos on the table. Is there a different way I should address you? She glanced at the first photo and immediately turned pale. Her tears flowed freely, and while they might have softened me a day earlier, now they only fueled my anger. So what part of being faithful didn't you understand? Luke, What? What are you going to say? It was just intimacy? It meant nothing? You only love me? What could you possibly say to make this okay? Please don't hate me. Take a few days to cool off. I'll never... Never what? Never do it again? How many times have you been with this guy? What about other guys? I can't believe you'd betray me like this, especially knowing how Haley cheated on me. You just don't understand a woman like me. Understand? My rage was boiling. I grabbed her by the back of the neck and pulled her face inches from mine, shouting at the top of my lungs. I understand perfectly what you are. I'd call you a pig, but that's an insult to swine. You had me fooled, didn't you? I'm sure you and your guy enjoyed talking about me while he was stealing you from me. I roughly pushed her away because I was afraid of what I might do. The fear in her eyes both satisfied and terrified me. Unable to look at her any longer, I turned my back to collect myself and speak more calmly. I guess I'll never understand a liar or a cheater. You really had me deceived. You've betrayed me and everything I thought we had. I didn't think I could be hurt this badly, but congratulations, you've managed to destroy me. I now see exactly what you are, and I know I can never trust you again. I paced for a few moments, trying to calm my anger while she sobbed softly. I want you out of this house tonight. My lawyer is already drafting the divorce papers. The prenup is in effect, given your actions. You have 30 minutes to leave, and we'll arrange through text for you to get the rest of your things. As I began to leave, her cries intensified, but I was indifferent. Luke, please, I love only you. Don't do this. I paused with my back to Zoe, staring at the floor. Love? Well, I don't love you anymore. All I see when I look at you is ugliness and nothing I want. And don't you dare say you love me. True love doesn't do what you did. You only love yourself. Now get out before I come back and tell your boyfriend to run, fast and far. Back to the bar. Linda hesitated as she made an observation. Your reaction seemed more intense than I expected. Even though we just met, you strike me as a kind and gentle person. Luke is kind and gentle too, Kaylee added, but betrayal can bring out a darker side in anyone. Yeah, I admit I was probably a bit out of control, but Linda, having experienced betrayal yourself, you might understand. With Harper, I knew we weren't right for each other. I truly believed Zoe was the one, and she tore my heart apart. I said those things to vent and to hurt her as much as I could without getting physical. But what I said was true. Maybe she'll learn from it. Maybe she won't. So, what happened after that? Did you ever find closure or manage to part on decent terms? I calmed down eventually, and we talked. If it had just been a mistake, I might have tried to save our marriage. I'm not perfect, so I'd hope for forgiveness if the roles were reversed. But this was an affair that had been going on before Zoe and I were even married, and she couldn't even commit to ending it. So we separated, but not amicably. Surprisingly, Zoe accepted the divorce without much resistance. She moved her business to New York, and I haven't seen or heard from her since. What happened to her lover? You mentioned he was badly beaten. Did that come back to you? He had a lot of bruises and was in pain for a while, but he recovered. What bothered him most was a scar over his eye that threatened his modeling career, but even that's cleared up now. Ironically, Zoe was my alibi since the attack happened 45 miles away while I was confronting Zoe in our dining room. My initial reaction was a sense of justice, but that feeling faded quickly. Sure, he was a scumbag, but I didn't want that to happen, and I didn't instigate it. So that's two. It seems you picked similar types of women and expected different outcomes. I smiled sadly. You sound like my friends. They've all tried to tell me the same thing, but I guess I'm a slow learner because I followed a similar path after Zoe. You're kidding? No, I wish I was. As sad as it was, you'll probably find it amusing how I found out about Samantha's cheating. Samantha. My divorce was finalized in October 2016, and I decided to fly to Dallas to spend Thanksgiving with Aubrey and Dennis. As usual, air travel was chaotic that week, and I found myself stuck at SeaTac for hours due to delays. While I was focusing on my beer in the lounge, a charming blonde woman sat down across from me, engrossed in a tense phone conversation. Look, I can't control what the airlines do. I can't just demand they take off because you want me to arrive on time. It's delayed. I'll be there later than expected. Her dimples were absolutely adorable and seemed to dance when she spoke, which made me chuckle quietly. She ended the call abruptly and muttered a few frustrated words. Realizing that I had overheard her conversation, she assumed I was laughing at her. Are you laughing at me, jerk? Oh no, I'm sorry if it seemed that way. I didn't mean to overhear. Then what are you laughing at? Caught off guard, I decided to be honest. I hope it doesn't upset you, but I couldn't help but notice your incredible dimples that really shine through when you're arguing. Luckily, she laughed and blushed while trying to hide her dimples. Sorry, my mom can make me cranky when she gets like that. She thinks the world revolves around her schedule and it's my fault if I'm late. Mothers can be like that. Are you okay? Oh yeah, I love my mom, but dealing with air travel is frustrating enough without her attitude. Your phone is ringing. It's her. Trust me, I'm avoiding her call to spare her feelings. I'm not in the best mood and I can't be responsible for what might come out of my mouth. Can I buy you a drink to help with your mood? A drink from a stranger? She gave a playful look with a shy grin, showcasing her dimples. I'm not that kind of girl. Well, I'm Luke, and you are? She laughed, smiled, and with a touch of mock exasperation said, I'm Samantha, or Sam to my friends. See? Now we're not strangers. What would you like to drink, Sam? We chatted for nearly 2 hours before my flight began boarding. I was truly taken by her wit and charm. While she might not have had the cover-girl beauty of Harper or Zoe, she was undeniably attractive. Her smile was a bit crooked, somewhat like Drew Barrymore's, and those delightful dimples made her incredibly alluring. She had an athletic build that made me feel like a high school sports star who had let himself go a bit. I knew I needed to make some changes. I almost regretted hearing the boarding announcement. Darn it, Sam. They're calling my flight. I really enjoyed our conversation. Do you live around the Seattle area? Yeah, I'm in Redmond. I'm just about next door in Kirkland. Would it be too forward to ask if you're seeing anyone? I'd love to take you out for dinner and get to know you better. My opinion of her attractiveness increased when she crinkled her nose. Wow, you're pretty forward. But you're kind of nice, so... Sure. Give me your phone. Of course. Here you go. Okay, I've added my info under Sam, and you can call me anytime after I return next Wednesday. Thanks. I never thought I'd be so pleased after a flight delay. Her giggle was enchantingly intimacy. Me too. I might even be in a good enough mood to call my mom back. We embraced, and it felt like I was in paradise. When she pulled away, she looked into my eyes and asked, Do you genuinely like my dimples, or was that just a line? Believe me, I really, really do. Luke? Yes? Please don't end up being some kind of weirdo. I really don't want to have to knock you around. I was relieved to hear her laugh. Don't worry. I'm so ordinary that I'm more afraid of boring you than anything else. The flight was wonderful. I felt as though I didn't even need the jet. I was fully immersed in lust, with the hope of love just around the corner. Everything seemed to be perfectly aligned. When I landed in Dallas, Dennis picked me up at the airport, and I was pleasantly surprised by how well he looked. During the drive to their home, he shared the great news that he was in remission. Dennis is truly one of the good guys, and I was overjoyed and relieved to hear he was doing well. Dennis and Aubrey had 3 children, and their home felt like the place I had always dreamed of for myself. Love was abundant there. Aubrey prepared an amazing meal and took the opportunity to admonish me for choosing self-absorbed women in the past instead of seeking someone with good character. I couldn't help but wonder where Sam would fit in if we ended up in a relationship. I waited until Thursday of the week we both returned home to call Sam. I expected a brief chat to arrange a date, but instead, our conversation turned into a 2.5-hour marathon that left me feeling like a teenager. By the end of the call, I was floating on cloud 9, a huge smile on my face as I savored the moment. I knew then that I wanted her. I was eagerly anticipating picking her up for our date. My excitement was so great that I had to resist the urge to leave far too early. Her apartment was only 3 miles from my house, and I expected to be making that drive frequently in the months ahead. Our first date took place at one of my favorite spots, Matt's Rotisserie and Oyster House. Conversation flowed easily, and I couldn't stop gazing into her eyes. I was falling faster than I wanted to, but it was undeniable. The more we talked, the more beautiful she appeared. Our conversation led to light kisses during dessert, and as we were about to leave, she pulled me into a passionate, delicious kiss. "Luke, you have no idea how much I want you to come to my place for a while." "Oh, I have a pretty good idea, but I'd like to take things a bit slowly. Is that all right?" "Yeah, I suppose so. You're still healing from your marriage, so there's no need to rush." "Thanks for being understanding. You're much more patient than my little brain." She raised an eyebrow and smiled at me. I was tempted to say something like, "That thing pressing against my stomach doesn't feel little at all. But that might not be the best choice if we're taking it slow, right?" I laughed to mask my sudden nervousness. Yeah, a comment like that would definitely alter my timeline. "Luke, I've been wanting you since you told me your name at the airport, but let's keep things at a relaxed pace. I'm fine with that." Cold showers worked for a few weeks, but by Christmas, we both knew we were in love and let our passions run free. Though I've never run a marathon, being intimate with Sam was the most intense workout I've had since football drills at Purdue. Thankfully, her favorite position was riding cowgirl, giving me some time to catch my breath. I wanted to make sure I could keep up with her, so getting into better shape became my top New Year's resolution. Several months later, Sam moved into my home just in time for Valentine's Day. It was clear that we were exclusive and moving quickly towards commitment. We planned a small, intimate wedding for the summer. Sam had played competitive volleyball and stayed active with various sports. Our weekends were filled with hiking, kayaking, biking, and jogging, alongside our bedroom activities. She was active in a local gym, and I decided to join her. We turned working out into a competition, buying Fitbits and using an iPad app to track our fitness progress both individually and as a couple. I was getting into the best shape of my life. The wedding was scheduled for the first Saturday in August. We each invited our immediate families and a few close friends. Melanie, my personal assistant, was coming with her husband, and Aubrey and Dennis were flying in for the event. I felt confident this time and eagerly anticipated Sam becoming Mrs. Riley. The wedding was informal, with just 37 guests, so Sam avoided the stress that often turns brides into bridezillas. Sam's sister was the maid of honor, and there were no other attendants. We had the minister perform the ceremony right at the reception hall to avoid transportation issues or wasted time. As I stood with the minister, waiting for my bride to approach, I scanned the guests. Melanie was several rows back, beaming at me, but I didn't see Aubrey or Dennis. I hoped they hadn't encountered flight problems. We exchanged vows, shared a kiss, and began the celebration. As the reception progressed, my concern grew with the absence of Aubrey and Dennis. About 2 hours into the reception, my phone buzzed with a text message. Aubrey, "Luke, I'm sorry we missed your special day. I didn't want to spoil your celebration, but Dennis's cancer has returned. He was admitted to the hospital yesterday. Don't worry, we're fine, but I hate that I couldn't be there for you. Call me when you're back from your honeymoon. I shared the message with Sam, and she agreed I needed to call Aubrey right away. I did, and while Aubrey tried to reassure me, it was clear Dennis was in serious trouble, and she was struggling to mask her fear. Sam and I spent our honeymoon in Hawaii, and I made an effort not to dwell on the challenges Dennis and Aubrey were facing alone. Despite everything, it was a wonderful trip, and Sam's support and attention to both my emotional and physical needs were a great comfort. A few weeks later, in mid-September, Sam and I flew to Dallas for a long weekend to visit Dennis and Aubrey. As soon as I stepped through their door, their son and 2 daughters nearly knocked me over with hugs, calling out to their Uncle Luke. But what truly took my breath away was seeing Dennis. The once robust center from our high school football team was now thin and frail. His skin had a grayish hue, and there was a sense of death hanging over him. I did my best to hide my shock and tried to treat him just as I always had. After dinner, while Sam helped Aubrey with the dishes, Dennis pulled me aside into his den. "Luke, you've probably realized I'm not going to beat this. Come on, Dennis. You're a fighter. Life's a fight we all lose eventually, my friend. I'm at peace with it. I'm more worried about Aubrey and the kids. They'll be fine financially. I've taken care of that. But promise me you'll look after them, okay? I think they'll stay here in Dallas, but the kids will need their godfather, Uncle Luke, and Aubrey will need her best friend. You didn't have to ask, but I promise. You know I love you, man, right?" "I know. The feeling's mutual. You're a good man, Luke, and a great friend." I couldn't stop my lips from trembling. I thought guys weren't supposed to cry. Dennis struggled to speak, his throat tight. "Real men do, buddy." Can a silence be both warm and sad? That's how it felt for several moments until Dennis changed the subject. "By the way, Sam seems amazing. I hope you two have a long and happy life together." 2 weeks later, Dennis was gone. The funeral and burial took place in Washington, where their families lived. Aubrey and the kids stayed with us for a few weeks as we helped them navigate through the difficult time. Sam was incredibly supportive, a true partner throughout the ordeal. Several months later, Sam approached me with an idea. "You know Hugh, the owner of the gym? He's thinking about retiring and asked if we might be interested in buying it." "Really? What do you want to do?" "My job at Microsoft is good, but this is more like a dream for me. It's something I'd really love to do." "Well, I'm not looking to change careers. I'm too established and have done well in the market. Why don't you go for it yourself?" "Alone? I suppose I could, but I don't have that kind of money. Maybe I can help. What's Hugh asking for?" "I have enough to buy the business, but he also wants to sell me the building. That part is $2 million I don't have and probably can't raise." I had been considering setting up an LLC to invest in real estate since my portfolio had grown significantly, giving me the flexibility to explore other investments. We decided to move forward with my LLC, naming it Riley Investments. Sam established a separate LLC under her name for the gym, and Riley Investments provided her with a line of credit to make some improvements and cover any fluctuating operating costs during the first few years. Our accountant and lawyer finalized the agreements, and our new ventures kicked off without a hitch. The night we completed all the paperwork, I was showered with kisses, and we celebrated passionately in bed throughout the weekend. Microsoft requested that Sam remain available as a consultant at a generous hourly rate. We weighed the pros and cons, but we both knew that the extra income would significantly stabilize her finances. It didn't take long to realize that the new business was going to be a major success. Running a business while also doing work for Microsoft, which required occasional travel, placed a heavy burden on Sam. She had the energy for it, but I had to step in at the gym when she needed to be out of town. Despite the busy schedule, we were happy and even started discussing plans to start a family. Sam thought it could work if she eventually gave up the Microsoft work. Shortly after our first anniversary, Sam had to travel to Atlanta for 3 days to support some software development. As usual, we spoke every night, sharing the details of our days. On the second night of her trip, she called just after 3 p.m. West Coast time, or 6 p.m. in Atlanta. "Hey Sam, how was your day?" "Great. We accomplished a lot, but there's still much to do. I can't talk long since some of the team is getting ready to continue working over dinner. Can I make it up to you tomorrow?" "Of course. I'm heading to the gym tonight to check on things, so I might as well see how the staff is doing." "Sounds good. Love you, babe." "Love you too." I went to the gym and decided to squeeze in a workout before checking things in the office. Satisfied that everything was running smoothly, I stayed until 9 to lock up. I was tempted to call Sam, but since it was past midnight in her time zone, I figured she had already had a long day. After a shower, I planned to unwind by playing a game on my iPad. The Fitbit app caught my attention, and I decided to check my progress. As I opened the app, I felt the blood drain from my body. My stomach twisted in pain as I saw the evidence of my life unraveling. Sam was exercising, her Fitbit was active, but why would she be working out at almost 1 a.m., her time? The more I examined the data, the more I recognized the pattern, and I knew instantly what was happening. I had to call her. On the first attempt, her phone rang until it went to voicemail. She had a specific ringtone for my calls, so she knew who was calling. I tried several more times, but it kept going to voicemail. Finally, on the 5th try, Sam answered. "Babe, is everything all right?" "No, it's not." "Are you hurt or in the hospital?" "Hurt? Yes, I'm deeply hurt." "Oh no, what happened?" "What's his name?" "What? Whose name? What are you talking about?" "The guy you're with, what's his name?" "What are you saying? I'm not—" "Tell me, Sam, why?" "Luke, Are you here? Are you going to answer my question?" "Oh, damn. How did you find out?" "Next time you sleep with someone who isn't your husband, take off your damn Fitbit." I ended the call, turned off my phone, and threw it across the room. Sleeping wasn't an option. I went for a walk to cool down, but instead I walked miles, crying my eyes out. This couldn't be happening. Not again. Why do I keep ending up with wives who can't stay faithful? I walked back home with some tasks in mind. Our finances were mostly separate, but we had a few joint accounts and credit cards for household expenses. I logged into the computer, emptied the accounts into one of mine, and closed the ones I could online. I sent a late-night email to my law firm, requesting a divorce attorney appointment as soon as possible. The next day, I took off work to sort out my affairs. I had the divorce papers prepared, with the prenuptial agreement already in place. I met with my accountant and lawyer to initiate the process of calling in Sam's loan for the gym, which included a clause allowing me to demand the full principal with 60 days' notice. How could I have been so foolish? How did she deceive me? Every part of me was in agony, and I wanted her to feel that pain and even more. The vengeful side of me wanted to destroy her. I hadn't spoken to Sam since the incident, so I had no idea what her plans were regarding coming home. To make matters worse, I shattered my phone when I threw it, so I had to buy a new one. The first thing I did was block Sam's number. I needed a friend, so I called Aubrey. She calmed me down and pleaded with me to be less vengeful. She was my conscience when I didn't want one, but I promised her I'd try. I thought about stopping by the pub, but if Sam stuck to her original travel schedule, she'd be back soon. I wanted to confront her and hoped to get home before she did. I wasn't so lucky. I walked in to find Sam crying. She rushed to hug me, but I pushed her away. "Don't touch me, Sam." "Oh, please, oh God. I'm sorry, please, please forgive me." "Sorry. Not gonna happen. Don't leave me, please. I don't want to lose you." "Lose? No. You threw us away." "Luke, please, I was stupid. I thought what? That you could get away with it? Or that I wouldn't care? Or did you think it wouldn't matter if you shattered our vows, that you could handle the fallout, Or that disrespecting me while you cheated wouldn't have consequences? Or did you think risking my love for you and breaking my heart was worth it? You didn't think at all. Or maybe you thought there was someone out there who was better in bed? Was that it? No, no. Then what were you thinking? Go ahead, give me your excuse. It wasn't justified, okay? It was just stupid, meaningless intimacy. Meaning, you must be joking. How often do you have meaningless intimacy, huh? Are you hooking up with guys at the gym? Sneaking off in the ladies' room? I can't even begin to understand how you could use that as an excuse. I just thought, there you go again, trying to tell me you thought this through. If it was about your libido, I was just a phone call away. If you can't go a few days without, then you're out of control. Please, Luke, help us get through this. Let me break it down for you, dear. You let another man, who you still haven't named, get close to you in a way that was supposed to be just between us. Don't give me any nonsense about it being your body to do what you want with. It's ours. Forsake all others until death do us part. Remember that? Well, there was a death. Our marriage died the moment you slept with him. She let out a cry deeper than any I'd ever heard from a person. I wanted to relish her pain, but it was killing me too. Get a grip, be quiet, and listen. You'll receive the divorce papers in the next few days. No, please, not a divorce. Let's work this out. Listen to me. The cheating clause in our prenup is active. You're not going to get much from this. I'm also calling in the loan. You owe over $350,000. You've got 60 days to pay it off, or the gym is mine. No, Luke. You'll ruin me. I said be quiet and listen. I won't call in the loan if you agree to the divorce. But if you fight it, I'll take everything. I don't care about the money or the gym. I just want you. Please, let's fix this. No, Sam. You knew how much I was hurt by cheating in the past. You promised you wouldn't do that to me, but a year later, you did. I'll never trust you again, especially after knowing how little you respected me, despite understanding how much this would devastate me. Damn it, Luke. I made a huge mistake. I'm not perfect, but neither are you. Are you saying you've never been tempted by another woman? I struggled to stay calm, biting my lip until I tasted blood. Sure, I'm not perfect. We all have fantasies. The difference is, you acted on yours. I never would have. Please, stop begging. It's making me sick. But we were planning to start a family. What? Do you honestly think I would want my kids to have a mother who thinks the way you do? I want kind, respectable, moral, loving children who make the world a better place. I don't want them influenced by someone who could do what you did. She started crying again, and I couldn't stand to hear it. I left, telling her I'd be back in a day or two once we'd both calmed down. It was hard leaving her there, sobbing uncontrollably on the floor, but I couldn't stay. I hoped she felt as destroyed as I did, but I felt awful for how I left her. Plus, I needed to get out before I broke down. I didn't want her to see that. After a few days, I had cooled off. We talked, and I agreed to try counseling to see if we could salvage things. I didn't want to be a 3-time loser, and I still cared for her. I just didn't know if I could ever feel that she was truly my life partner again. After 6 weeks of meetings with a psychologist, when we returned home from our last class, Sam was unusually silent. I looked at her several times and saw that tears were quietly flowing down her cheeks. Like many guys, I'm not very observant, but I knew that night would change everything. We walked through the front door in silence, and Sam broke the silence. Can we sit down and talk? I need to tell you a story. Of course, baby. I assumed that she decided to sit next to me on the couch to avoid eye contact. Sam took a deep breath and, gathering all her strength, began her story. When I was little, my dad and I were very close. I was his princess, and he was my hero, which is what a father should be. My sister and I always sat next to him on the couch when watching a movie or just relaxing with the whole family after dinner. Even during my teenage rebellious years, my dad and I were close. When I was 16, I swore an oath of chastity to him in our church that I would save myself for marriage. This promise was not easy for me. I spoke sincerely. When I was a child, our church held similar events. Yeah, it was all the rage back then. Anyway, I started dating a guy from my Sunday school. We dated for about a year, and he pestered me all the time with requests for intimacy. On my 18th birthday, I gave up, and Pandora's box opened. I know how you are. Yeah. Anyway, one evening, all the other family members went to a banquet, and my boyfriend and I were home alone. Of course, we were ready even before the family car pulled away from the driveway. About 15 minutes later, we were on the case, and yes, I was on edge. I looked up and saw my father standing in the doorway, looking at us. He had diabetes and forgot to take insulin, so he had to go back for it. His lips twitched as if he was about to say something, but instead, he just walked away. I disguised myself well enough to run after him, even though I had no idea what I was going to say. Before he went out the door, he turned to me. There were tears in his eyes, and I felt as if I had been struck by lightning. I couldn't move. Then he said calmly, "You're already a grown woman, and you can make your own decisions." Then he left. He took it pretty calmly. No, not really. I caused him terrible pain. But what broke my heart was the look in his eyes that night and every day after that, until he died. Before that, whenever he looked at me, there was a love in his gaze that was impossible not to notice. I could have sworn his eyes twinkled. But that expression has disappeared since that night. When he looked at me, it seemed to me that he saw only what he saw that evening, a sight that no father should see. Sam's face was etched with tears and pain as she remembered her past. A shiver ran down my spine as I understood why she had forced herself to share this painful milestone with me. I wanted to speak, but decided to let her continue. After that, we never cuddled again. We still hugged when we greeted each other or said goodbye, but the special closeness of Daddy and Princess was gone. We remained affectionate, but we were just father and daughter now. She took a moment to collect herself, and I embraced her, partly to offer comfort, but mostly to show her that I understood. "Luke, I see the same look in your eyes that my dad had when I look at you now. When you look at me, you see me with some faceless man, and you relive my betrayal. I can feel that you desperately want it all to disappear, so we can return to how things were before I messed up, but you can't help it. I'm sorry. I don't hold on to it to punish you or anything. I still love you. I know you do, but that look will always be there. You can't trust me no matter how much you want to. No matter what I do to prove my faithfulness and commitment, in the back of your mind, you'll always fear the old saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. There's nothing either of us can do. I broke what can't be fixed to return things to how they were. Are you suggesting we should just give up? I'm saying you deserve someone you can trust completely, and I need to find someone who looks at me the way you used to before my mistakes. We both need to move on separately." At the bar, Linda's emotions were frayed, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. I had shed a few tears of my own, just from reliving that nightmare. After I left Sam at the house, I came straight to the pub. The moment I walked in, Kaylee knew something was wrong just by looking at me. Kaylee wiped away her own tears as she recounted that evening. I noticed Luke walk in, and I could see he was on the verge of breaking down. I quickly told Pete to watch the bar and hurried Luke into the office. As soon as the door closed, he collapsed into my arms and cried his heart out. Linda stared intently at her beer. I know that feeling. I know that pain. Kaylee comforted me and talked with me for hours. Eventually, she got me to laugh a bit, and that's when she came up with my nickname. 3 cheats to the wind? Yeah, Kaylee said. I told him he would survive this and that. Eventually, he could just let the pain go, like he had done twice before. He swore he'd never put himself in that situation again. I knew him too well to believe he'd stay alone forever, but I figured he just needed time. Linda placed her hand on mine, a faint smile on her face. But you seem okay now. Actually, more than okay. You give me hope. I just moved here for a fresh start, and it feels like fate brought us together so you could share your story with me. You seem happy now. I finally realized I was making the same mistake over and over again. It started in high school when I decided that intimacy, image, and a sure thing were more important than shared values and respect. I had the perfect woman, but I let her slip through my fingers, and I never stopped chasing the wrong things. You were thinking of Aubrey. I closed my eyes and smiled. Yeah, it took me a few months to move on from Sam, but I eventually realized that the woman I needed and wanted was the one who had always been my best friend. So you went to Dallas and swept her off her feet? Kaylee grinned and playfully slapped the bar. You'd think he would do something that straightforward, but no. Luke the genius found a way to mess that up too. Thanks, Mama Kaylee. Linda's expression turned somber, as if witnessing a tragedy. You didn't go after Aubrey? Of course I did, but I was treading lightly with her because I wasn't sure if she was ready to move on after Dennis's passing. We stayed in touch, and I was trying to gauge the right moment to confess my love. Kaylee here was my sounding board. I was all set to tell Kaylee that I had tickets to fly down and see Aubrey. Naturally, I planned to sweep her off her feet when I arrived. So what happened? 4 weeks earlier. I got up after a night without sleep. Well, technically, you can't wake up if you never actually slept, but I sat up with a newfound determination. I had spent the night tossing and turning until around 3 a.m. when I made a decision. I was going to Dallas to tell Aubrey how I felt. If everything went as I hoped, I'd return home engaged to the woman I had wanted for as long as I could remember. Once I made that decision, sleep was impossible. I was caught between battling my fears and embracing my excitement. I was a wreck, but I was resolute in finding out if she felt the same way. It was Friday morning, and I had to get some work done. I headed to the office, rushed through the tasks that absolutely needed to be completed, and managed to book a flight to Dallas for the next day. Finishing everything took longer than I anticipated, but by 4 p.m., I was done, and I headed to the pub to share my plans with Kaylee. 3 cheat, Luke. You're here early today. I know, and I can't stay long, but I had to tell you, I finally decided to go see Aubrey. I need to tell her how I feel. Well, you don't. Listen, I gotta go and get ready. I want to stop by the jewelry store to make sure I show up with a ring in hand. Luke, listen. Kaylee, thanks for all your help. I couldn't. Luke, shut up and listen. I gotta deliver these drinks, but if you'll be quiet for a moment and turn around, I think you'll find that you don't need to go to Dallas. What? What do you mean? Look in the booth by the restrooms. I'll be right back. I turned around, and my heart jumped in my chest, only to plunge into despair just as quickly. I recognized Aubrey's profile instantly, and she was sitting with some guy, holding his hand across the table. They smiled at each other like two people deeply in love. The pain in my gut was unbearable. I quickly left the bar to avoid embarrassing myself and ended up vomiting in the bushes outside the front door. I was in a state of shock. My mind was a complete mess, and I couldn't even string together 2 simple thoughts. I turned off my phone and drove aimlessly, wallowing in self-pity. I just kept driving, my mind racing in all directions until the tears blurred my vision. Eventually, I realized I had driven all the way to West Seattle, so I headed down to Alki Beach to take a break. My eyes were burning by the time I found a parking spot. I pulled in and just sat there, crying like a baby. After finally regaining some control, I walked out to the sidewalk along the beach and sat there as the sun set over the water. My head was filled with thoughts, but I couldn't focus, and I felt utterly lost. It must have been around midnight when I finally drove home. I took a shower, got dressed, and headed to the office around 1 a.m., hoping to distract myself. Since it was the middle of the night on a Saturday, I knew I'd be alone, and that was exactly what I needed at that moment. Aside from canceling my flight, I got nothing done. I managed to catch a few hours of sleep on the office couch, then sat in my desk chair, staring out the window, searching for answers that seemed out of reach. Should I let her go? Should I fight for her? I couldn't make up my mind about what was right or wrong. Finally, around 2 p.m., I went to the pub to see Kaylee. I realized I had left the previous night without talking to her after she warned me about Aubrey being there with a date, so she was probably worried. When I walked in, Kaylee immediately spotted me, but her expression wasn't what I expected. I thought she'd be concerned, but she was clearly angry. "You damn fool! What the hell were you thinking running out of here like that?" She slammed a beer down in front of me, and before I could say anything, she started tearing into me. "You jerk! You had me worried, you idiot! I've got to finish delivering some drinks, but you stay right in that seat until I get back." The words she actually used were altered to protect the innocent. Kaylee never cursed, especially not at me, so I figured it was best to stay quiet. What had her so riled up? She kept glaring at me, shaking her head and muttering awful names under her breath. She texted someone, took care of the other customers, and all the while kept shooting me those angry looks. After about 10 minutes, she finally finished what she was doing and stood in front of me, staring at me like a demon trying to burn a hole through my soul. It was clear she was trying to calm herself before speaking. I was too scared to say anything. "You complete idiot. I thought you were going to go over to Aubrey's table, but instead, like a fool, you ran out the door. What were you thinking? What on earth were you trying to do?" I couldn't. "Shut up. You spent months, no, years, telling me how Aubrey was the woman you loved, and then you just run off without even talking to her?" "But you warned me. You showed me where they were sitting." "Warned you? Warned you about what?" "Damn it, Kaylee. You know I love her more than anything. I told you I was going to Dallas to finally tell her how I felt and ask her to marry me. In my heart, I had already committed my life to Aubrey, the woman I've loved since we were kids. I would do anything to make her mine. But when you showed me where she was sitting with her boyfriend, I realized she probably had other plans with that guy." Kaylee's expression softened a lot, but then I noticed she wasn't looking at me. She was looking just over my shoulder. Then I felt a gentle hand on my back and heard the voice of an angel. "Is that really how you feel about me, Luke? I've been waiting almost 20 years to hear you say those words." I spun around on the bar stool, and Aubrey pulled me into her arms. Our lips met, and our tongues danced with a fury and passion I had never experienced before. I felt our hearts and minds fuse into one love-bound life. Our spirits soared into a new dimension, as if we could leave our bodies and look down on a heaven-blessed union. After 3 marriages and countless other relationships, it took just one real kiss for me to finally understand what my dad had been trying to tell me all those years ago. Without a doubt, it was clear. Aubrey was the one. She was the true love I had always wanted and needed. At the bar, Linda couldn't hold back her tears. "You almost missed out on the woman of your dreams again?" Kaylee shot me a sharp look, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, he did. After he finally got his act together after that rather steamy display, I asked him what he was thinking pulling a stunt like that. I told you, she was sitting with another guy." Kaylee looked like she was about to scold me again, but I caught the sparkle in her eye. "Then I told him he was a damn fool for jumping to conclusions without checking first." A smile spread across my face as I felt her hands on my shoulders. "Kaylee, are you teasing Luke again?" I turned to see the love of my life and pulled her into a kiss. After a few seconds, Kaylee chuckled and cleared her throat. You two want to get a room? This PDA is making the customers uncomfortable." Aubrey smiled at her. "We'll be making great use of a room in a few days, right, sweetie?" Linda smiled, her cheeks still glistening with tears. "You two are beautiful together." "Oh, I'm sorry." Linda, I'd like you to meet my fiancée. Hi, Linda. Luke's manners are a little off. I'm Aubrey. Linda's eyes filled with happy tears again. Aubrey, I'm so glad to meet you. Luke has been talking about you all evening. I have to say, if he had ended up with anyone else, this would have been the worst story ever. It's wonderful when high school friends end up together. Luke, you've been talking about me? You're the only thing worth talking about. She kissed me gently again. Oh, you're so sweet. She raised her eyebrows and turned to Linda. I wouldn't say we were sweethearts. We were best friends, definitely. I needed to clarify. I think we both wanted to be more than friends, but it was hard for us to stop being just close friends. Aubrey grinned and said, Actually, Luke was just a teenager, and I was too serious to be his test subject for such experiments. Okay, she's right. Sometimes I wonder how things would have turned out if I had grown up earlier. I always loved her, and as a result, I had 3 women who possessed her external beauty, but were empty inside, not at all like the person she was and remains to this day. Aubrey, Luke wasn't lying when he talked about how cute you are, someone added. Oh, you're both so kind. What matters is that when I look into his eyes, I see how deeply our hearts are connected. I know that he loves me unconditionally, and I feel like the happiest woman in the world. Linda grabbed Aubrey's hand and looked at us both with concern. Wait, what happened to the other guy? Aubrey smiled at her knowingly. I didn't have another boyfriend. It was my cousin Paul. I stayed with him and his wife for several weeks while I was looking for a place to live in the area. I had already planned to return and hoped that Luke would finally have the courage to ask me to marry him. Linda smiled and wiped a few tears from her eyes. You two are great together. Damn it. I was hoping I'd have a chance to get Luke, she laughed. But as I see it, it's a hopeless case. I moved here from California to start over, and I was hoping to find new friends and maybe a real soulmate. I hope there are a few more like Luke here who are closer to my age. Kaylee reached across the bar, placing one hand on my shoulder and the other on Linda's. Linda, you've just made 3 new friends right here. Aubrey chimed in. Absolutely, and you have to come to the wedding on Saturday, especially since you're new in town. Oh, that's really kind, but I wouldn't want to intrude. No way, girl. Joining the celebration of 2 of your 3 new friends in Seattle is anything but an intrusion. We'd be hurt if you didn't come. Besides, most of the guests will be from around here, and you'll likely leave with a whole bunch of new friends. Okay, you've convinced me. Luke, sweetheart, text her the details. You two really are the sweetest couple. Don't you think it's a bit of a shame that you both had to go through so much to get to this point? I can't speak entirely for Luke, but I think he needed those experiences to get his head on straight. As for me, I wouldn't trade anything for the time I had with Dennis, or the joy our 3 kids have given me. I loved that man with all my heart. So, wishing things had started differently with Luke doesn't matter, and maybe it wouldn't have worked out at all. I believe the timing was just right, and the good Lord knows what he's doing. My love for Luke never faded, and it's just as strong as the love I had for Dennis. I'm lucky to have had 2 wonderful men fill my life with love. That's so sweet. It's amazing that you finally ended up together. It wasn't a miracle. It was a conspiracy, I said, just as Aubrey playfully smacked me on the head and laughed. Kaylee and Aubrey orchestrated the whole thing behind my back. That's somewhat true, Kaylee added. When Luke and Sam broke up, I called Aubrey. Luke had already told her, but I said that wasn't the reason I was calling. I asked her when the 2 of them were going to wake up and get together. Aubrey chuckled as she took over the story. Dennis had been gone for 11 months by then, and I wasn't quite ready to jump into a new relationship. I have to admit that being with Luke wasn't a new idea to me. But I wasn't ready, and I didn't think Luke would be either, with his recent breakup still fresh. Luke and I talked at least once a week, and I could hear the anger and hurt in his voice. So I told Kaylee to work on helping him heal, since I knew Luke was here almost every night, and I'd try to gauge his progress when Luke called. I already knew I wanted Luke, and I figured he'd be ready right around the time I felt healed enough to move forward. I jumped in when Aubrey paused. It took about 6 months, and I realized that I couldn't stop thinking about Aubrey. I even considered quitting my job and moving to Dallas to start my own business, hoping that Aubrey and I could build a future together. Of course, he didn't know I was already planning to move back to Kirkland. Shush, sweetie. I'm telling this. Go on, hotshot. So, anyway, they had it all planned out when Aubrey would show up at the bar to surprise me. And then this fool nearly messed everything up with his disappearing act. Kaylee, you ladies just can't let a guy tell his story. Sorry, go ahead. As I was saying, that's when I almost ruined everything. You know the rest. When Aubrey came up behind me after Kaylee tore into me, it felt like I went from total darkness to pure light. The moment Aubrey spoke, before I could say anything or even turn around, she gave me the deepest, most passionate kiss of my life. It felt like a jolt of electricity, like my heart started beating for the first time. That was some kiss, baby. Every kiss with you is like that. Anyway, when we finally pulled apart, she looked into my eyes and asked, "Go on, sweetie, you tell her." I said, "Luke, do you love me as much as I just heard you tell Kaylee?" He was talking so sweet about me. And I answered, "I love you with all that I am, and I want us to be a family. Marry me, Aubrey." That was 4 weeks ago. Wait, you two planned a whole wedding in 4 weeks? Linda, I've wasted 16 years trying to get the woman I've always wanted. I knew all along she was the one for me, and I blew it with too many foolish choices. We weren't about to waste another second. The wedding was absolutely magnificent. I am completely convinced that there is no woman more beautiful than Aubrey. Linda did attend the wedding. She spent a lot of time mingling and getting to know many people, but she was particularly interested in Aubrey's older brother, who is single. They've become quite the couple over the past few months, and Linda has become one of our closest friends. I'm no longer Uncle Luke. The kids now call me Papa Luke. They asked if they should start calling me Dad, but I told them that while I already loved them as my own, their father was a special man, and they should always remember him as Dad. Papa or Papa Luke would be just fine. Before the wedding, Aubrey asked if I wanted a prenuptial agreement. No way, honey. You are my everything, my entire world. Trust me, there's no need for a plan B. So, 3 cheats to the wind isn't aiming for a record? Absolutely not. Being married to you is a joy that goes far beyond what I deserve. My days of marrying cheaters are behind me. Maybe one day one of our kids will write a story about us. Maybe they'll title it something clever like, "It Only Took 4 Tries." Speaking of kids, Mr. Riley, we need to start preparing a nursery. My 3 cheaters from the past are long gone and no longer have any hold over me. I can now truly say with every fiber of my being, "Oh yeah, life is good.